Welcome back, my fellow game developers. In this video we are going to be learning everything about version control, source tree, and creating repositories of our projects. So as you can see right here, we've created a new project. We started our big project, which is CyberSpy 2087, and we've downloaded source tree. We now have a couple of commits in here, and we actually reverted something. We've created our initial commit, added a cube, reverted it. We can actually reverse this commit again. So click on yes. As you can see, we can go back to Unity, reload, and we have our cube right here. We will be learning everything in minute detail. So give me your entire concentration. This is very important. It's an extremely helpful video or lesson, and it will stay with you forever as long as you are committed to becoming a professional programmer or game developer. So let's not waste any more time and let's get started. Okay, so version control. Let me put on my laser. Version control, it's hard to learn, it's even harder to teach, but I'll try to keep it as simple as possible. And when you get the hang of it, trust me, it's very simple and easy to use. Plus, it's an indispensable skill that you need to learn if you are looking to become a professional game developer or even a professional programmer. So let's get started with what is it. First of all, it's a system that is responsible for managing changes to computer programs. So this means that whenever we create changes in our programs, we can actually save those changes at each step of our project. This way we can first of all check what we did. We can create different kinds of versions where we can go back and change the things that we've created. It allows for a better teamwork. So for example, let's say you have 4 or 5 people working on the same project, but each one of them has a different task that they need to create. So version control is a very good way of handling all of this. And why do we need it? Well, why we actually use it? Well, we'll use it to remember previous version of our game and have more flexibility to experiment. Usually game development is an environment where you require a lot of experimentations. For example, you want to add some kind of property to some kind of game object and maybe it breaks your entire project. So you want to always have a previous version of your project before adding this game-breaking mechanic, so you can always go back and start fresh from there. So this is extremely important, especially for game developers that always need to be experimenting with new ideas and things in their games and projects. And how are we going to use it? Well, we are going to be using something called source tree. And this is version control. It allows us to create different versions, and it's, first of all, it's for free. It's very easy for beginners, very flexible, and it has a very simple interface that we can use as beginners. So let's go ahead and download source tree. Let me show you where we can do that. If you open up Google, Chrome, or any browser that you have, simply go to Google and write in here download source tree. You should find a link right here, and it should be the source tree app. When you click on it, you go right here to their website. If you scroll up, you can see that you have the option to download for Windows, but if you are on a Mac, make sure that you click on here and you download the source tree for Mac OS, or it will not work for you. So if you have a Mac, download the Mac version. If you have a Windows, download the Windows version. Simple enough. Now, when you finish downloading, you should get this file right here, and when you double click on it, you should start the installation. Now, because I already have source tree, I will not be installing it another time. I will just take you through the process of actually installing it. Okay, so this is the first window that will pop up for you. First of all, you'll need to agree to the license, of course, and you can maybe turn this off if you don't want any emails your way from source tree and etc. Atlassian. Next thing, you'll need to do is you need to create an account on Atlassian. You can go to Atlassian, and Atlassian is the parent company of SourceTree. You can go ahead and create an account there, or you can use an existing account if you already have a Gmail. I personally created one using Gmail. It's much faster, it's way easier, and they don't spam you with a lot of emails. Next thing in here, we are going to connect it to an account. Now this is, of course, we will not be doing this. This is if you want to host your code on a certain website like GitHub or Bitbucket. We will not be doing that, so you can simply click here on skip setup. Finally, while installing, SourceTree will tell you that it is unable to locate Git. So in order to complete this, simply click on download an embedded version of Git and continue on. And then it may also ask you for something called a Mercurial. Now, Mercurial is a different system, just like Git. It allows us to save different versions of our project. We will not be using Mercurial, so you can simply click on I don't want to download, or I don't want to use Mercurial, and this should be it. When you finish installing, you should have this right here in your, this window right here when you start SourceTree. If you don't, simply click right here on create and you should get this window. Now this is where we actually create our repository, and in here you can see that we have the destination path, the name, and the type of version control that we want to use. Of course, we'll be using the Git. We also have the option to create an account, but as I've told you, we're keeping things very simple. It's our first time, so we will not be creating any account. So in here, we are going to choose what is the destination path of our repository. So what is the project that we are actually going to be creating a repository for and subsequent versions of. Well, let's create our first project that we are going to be using. So in here, let's open up the Unity Hub. And as you can see, we already have Hello World that we've done in a previous video. Let's click on New, and let's make sure it's a 3D project. And this is going to be our Cyber Spy 2087. Let's go ahead and create this project. So click on Create. And I, of course, always using my magic of editing in order to speed up this process. I'll see you on the other side. Okay, welcome back. So I hope everything worked out for you. So now we have a new project, which is Cyber Spy 2087. So now that we have our project created, we can actually go ahead and get started with creating a repository. Now, if we go back into our source tree right here, we can click on Browse, and we can actually go ahead into Unity projects, and you can see that we have a Hello World and we have a Cyber Spy 2087. So let's select this folder. It will create a repository under this name, and if we hit create, it will ask a problem. Don't worry about it. Click on yes, and voila. Now we have actually started creating a repository. You have the staged files right here. You have different kind of knobs. You don't need to worry about any of them. For now, just focus on the staged files, unstaged files, and commit up here. Now, if we scroll down in these unstaged files, you can see that most of them are from the library. We scroll down to the end, we can see some of them are temp or temporary. We can see also that we have project settings, and these are all the files that we have for our project. We also have assets in here for Unity in the scenes, for example. So this is a repository, which is a version of our current project. Now, the problem here is, as you can see, there are a ton and ton of files, and we will not be needing all of them. Well, actually, we'll need almost none of them. We will need only a certain kind of files. So we want to be ignoring the library and the temporary files. Why is that? Well, let me show you by opening up the directory of our current project. Okay, so this is CyberSpy 2087's directory inside of Unity project, as you can see up here. So we have the assets, the library, logs, packages, etc. and etc. Now, what is the temporary folder and what is the library folder, and why don't we actually need them? So temporary is just a way for Unity to open up faster whenever we start the project, and it's always created whenever we open a project. So for example, if I go into Unity right here and I actually close it, you'll see that the temporary file will disappear. And even if we delete the library right now, so let's go ahead and delete this library entirely. If we go back into our Unity Hub and open up CyberSpy 2087, as you can see right here, you saw that the library has been created again and the temporary folder has also been created. So of course the project should take a bit more time now to open up, but this is evidence that a library and the temporary folders are not necessary for us to always commit and stage. And what do I mean by stage? So whenever we stage our folders, we actually create a commit from them and a version of them, and library takes up a lot of space. As you can see, if we scroll down, it takes up most of the space and we don't want any of them at all. So how should we proceed? Well, we can actually ignore all of the folders that are under the library by simply going and choosing any of the folders that have library on them, right click on it, and in here you can see that we have the option to ignore one of them. So click on ignore, and in here you have the option to ignore this exact file name, ignore all files with this extension, or you can ignore everything beneath a library, and this is what we want. So click on OK, and as you can see, everything under library has now been ignored, so we cannot stage it, so we cannot save it to our newer version. And if you scroll up, you might have noticed that we have a new folder in here that is the .gitignore, and when we click on it, on the right you can see that it has the library in it. And if we double click on it, we can actually open it up in our notepad, and in here we can add the different files that we also want to ignore. So what are the files that we want to ignore? Well, there are a ton of files, but thankfully somebody has actually gone through all these files and created a list of everything that we can ignore whenever creating version controls or versions of our project. And in order to find that file, you can go again into Google, our dear friend. Go ahead and search .gitignore Unity, and you should have this link right here for the github.com. It will be hosted on GitHub. If you open up this link, it will take you right here. So this is the .gitignore, and it's the unity.gitignore, and these are all the files that we can ignore when creating versions of our project. You can click on raw right here, and it will open up this window or this tab. Let's go ahead and select all of them by clicking on Ctrl A. We will copy all of this using Ctrl C, and we are going to paste it in here in our .gitignore notepad. And now we have this gitignore notepad filled with all the files that we will not use for our repository. We will save that using Ctrl S. And now back in Unity, or I mean back in source tree, you can see that when we hit the gitignore, everything is ignored. We will stage all of that, and when we stage all of that, you can see that these are the files that are going to be committed, and these will be our initial commitment or our initial repository version of the project. And usually whenever you create your initial commit, we call this the initial, you can capitalize it, the initial commit. and we click on commit right here. So now if you look on the left, you can see that we have branches under here and we have the master branch. Congratulations, we have created our first commitment. Very nice. Now let me just show you how we will move further down the line. Even though this video has been long enough, but I think we need to get a proper foundation for source tree and version control as we move through our project. So let's say we are in our project right here, and let's go ahead and create some kind of cube. So 3D object, right click in the hierarchy, 3D object, create a cube, and now we have a cube. Let's scale it up a bit, so scale it on the X, the Y, and the Z. Great, so now we have a cube in our scene. And now if we go into source tree, let's save that before we go, and it needs to save it to a certain scene. So let's, inside of scenes, this will be our sample scene. Sure, sample scene, yes, replace it. So we have this sample scene back in source tree. Wait for it a bit, and you can see that we have uncommitted changes. So if we click on them, you can see that the unstaged files are changes inside of the scenes, which is the sample scene. And here you can look in detail what we've created. Now, it's a bit weird right here, but if you look closely, you can see that we've created box collider, and basically this represents the cube that we've added to our scene. So let's go ahead and stage all of that. We can click on commit right here and name this added a cube. Click on commit, and now in our master branch you can see that we have an initial commit which didn't have any cube, and now in our added cube we've, well, added a cube. So congratulations. And as a final note, this may look a bit cumbersome, this may look a bit weird, but don't be afraid. This is very simple, and more importantly, it's extremely important for us to understand as we move through our project, create versions of it. And if we ever make a mistake, we can actually go back by right-clicking in here and reversing the commit. And yes, we can reverse the commit. If we go back into Unity, it will ask us for a reload. We reload, and now we don't have the cube or any game-breaking mechanic that we've added along the way. And now it's time for your challenge. And your challenge is going to be to download and set up source tree and the .ignore file. So download source tree, install and set up everything, create your 3D project in Unity Hub, set up a repository for it in source tree, ignore the library files, get the .ignore file and add it to your repository, create your first commit, and then create your second commit. You can even go ahead and try to maybe play around with a couple of things, add a cube, reverse the commit, see what happens, get comfortable with source tree. And if you're having a bit of trouble, you can pause the video on this list of things that you need to create. And you can also always go back and watch the video and see how I made everything and follow along with me step by step. So I'll see you in just a bit. So in the next video, we are going to be setting up our world, creating various materials, and starting our big Cyber Spy 2087 project. So I'll see you there.